My very dear, most loyal and true brothers and trusty, sincere ears in respect of the Risale-i Nur, I received an admonishment to disclose a most meaningful and powerful coincidence, an indication of the student's loyalty, an explicit wonder of the Risale-i Nur. It is this: at just the same time that I wrote my will, coward dissemblers found an opportunity when my assistants, whom I trust, were prevented by the police from coming to me, and by means of a person I did not know gave me some poison that was more powerful than that given me 9 times previously. Also, at the same time, the Tunisian scholar Hoca Hashmet, who is one of our brothers, and last year came this far to visit me, but left without seeing me, wrote to hear from Yozgat saying, Said has died. The 130 treatises of the Risale-i Nur should be kept so that we can print them in the future. Also, at the same time, Halil Ibrahim's sad eulogy-like letter about my death made the students weep. Also, very close to that time, in 1 or 2 letters about my death, Hüsrev, in an accustomed manner, alluded to my death with such phrases as a lifetime of 2 or 3 days, and saddened me. Alarmed, I wondered if I was going to depart. Also, around that time, while dwelling mostly on my duty in this worldly life, and worrying whether the students would perform it in my place at this ghastly time, Denizli, Milas, Sparta, and Inebolu, and the teacher, scholars, and others raised to that duty with such favor, and partially in a way far exceeding my hopes, that I was left in amazement. In short, this fivefold coincidence was a clear wonder of the Risale-i Nur. Praise be God! This is from the grace of my Lord. My brothers, don't be alarmed. The Jawshan and Evrad Baha'iyya have again overcome and dispelled the dangers of that terrible poison. The danger has passed, but the illness continues. I send greetings to each and every one of my brothers and pray for their well-being and request their doubtlessly acceptable prayers. And with all my life and spirit I congratulate the many women and children in Inebolu and its environs who are starting to write out the Risale-i Nur, and the many innocents taking lessons about the Qur'an. The enduring one, he is the enduring one, your brother who is much in need of your prayers. Said Nursi. My brothers, don't be upset and don't worry. Just help me with your prayers. For several days now, my left arm aches severely and disturbs me at night. I have allowed no one to be with me. I can only attend to the necessary jobs in my room with the greatest difficulty. I reckon it is an offshoot of the chronic lumbago I have suffered for years. I am badly affected by the physical climate here and the winter, as well as by the groundless suspicions and persecution of those cruel people and the non-physical winter. I experience severe suffering as though half affected by apoplexy. But, all thanks be to God, your acceptable prayers have lessened the danger considerably. God willing, it will pass altogether in that way, and only its many rewards will remain in its place. My brothers, according to what Salahuddin writes, the staff of Moses' collection sees much action in that region and wins many victories. This means that it is performing that most important duty of the Risale-i Nur there. All praise be to God 100,000 times, and for those who write it out, 100 mashallah and barakallahs. My dear loyal brothers, firstly, endless thanks be to Almighty God that, as proved by the unwavering activities of the heroic students in these harsh conditions, Sparta will be a full Madrasatul Zahra and Al-Azhar University, and has begun to be so. They are working enthusiastically at the Qur'an and Risale-i Nur, and in Aliköy'ü even many children becoming students through the efforts of the Alis, and all the young people in another village working at the Qur'an at night, and the mosques being filled with congregations reduces to nothing the difficulties suffered by the Nur students. Secondly, for sure, the fourth long poem of the extraordinarily loyal and defeated Halil Ibrahim, and the descriptions far exceeding my due of my servitude of the Risale-i Nur are really very fine, but since the poem looks more to my person than to the Risale-i Nur, I have not sent it to you for now. It shall be sent after it has been modified. I particularly send greetings to him and to his companions. Thirdly, don't be anxious about their conspiracies against me. Perhaps, indeed, you should be pleased that they are attacking my insignificant person, whose work is finished in place of the Risale-i Nur and its students, and tormenting me. Recently, there has been the incident of the high-ranking officials here telling some people that Said should be disposed of. Profiting from ideas like this that have been put around, my secret enemies scattered my assistants and, seizing the opportunity, poisoned me. They felt empowered by officials like them, but divine providence and preservation thwarted their conspiracy. God willing, this providence and preservation will persist and all their plans will be foiled. Although I had not applied to them for 20 years, this petition was written addressing Hilmi Uran, the interior minister, once off and when I was angry because he was persecuting me. It was sent to the Afyon police chief for his information. 4 or 5 times they meaninglessly and unnecessarily harassed me. They summoned me to the police station officially and demanded, "That's not how you write. Who wrote it for you?" I replied, "Application shouldn't be made to such people. I was right to keep silent for 20 years. Police and authorities of Emirdağ, I wrote the below conversation a year ago, then held it and did not send it. But now they are intervening and preventing my assistant from helping me, which is illegal in 5 respects, and are constraining and holding me under an absolute despotism in a way unheard of in the world. I am publicizing this in the hope that those who flout the law in the name of the law will act more fairly and justly." Part of a conversation with the interior minister. I have been the target of an injustice that has been unprecedented in history on the face of the earth, and cruelty and oppression that are illegal in 10 respects. It is as follows. How does it profit you to inflict the police on an extremely weak, elderly, 71-year-old who is severely ill from being poisoned as a result of a conspiracy, is alone in piteous exile, impoverished to the extent that he had to sell his sack, coat, vest, and slippers to secure his needs, a solitary recluse who for 25 years is able to meet with only one completely loyal person out of 1,000, an innocent man whose life and works of 20 years have been ruled by 3 courts, and the Ankara Experts Committee to be beneficial, not harmful, for the country and nation, a son of this land who performed important services in the Great War, a patriot who has striven with all his strength with his effective works to save this nation and country from anarchy and the corruption of foreigners, and as has been testified to by 70 witnesses in court, has not read a newspaper for 25 years, nor been curious about the news, has taken no interest in the Second World War, nor has asked about it, nor known about it, and as is proud in his works has completely cut all his ties with politics, and as has been admitted officially by your judiciary, has not interfered in your world. How does it benefit you to set foremost yourself, the interior minister, and the governor of Afyon, and the Emirdağ police on this wretched Said, who flees desperately from public regard lest harm should come to his life in the hereafter, and his sincerity, and dislikes and shrinks from his brothers' good opinions about him and their praise? What profit is there in making him suffer in one day the terms of a month's solitary confinement, compelling him to remain all alone and solitary in anguish? I ask, what law permits this ghastly cruelty? And I declare the above to the interior minister by way of the Minister of Justice, which protects the rights of the public. Said Nursi, who is unjustly deprived of all civil and human rights and the right to life. My dear loyal brothers and Osman, Mehmet, and Hasan Efendis, who are as true to me in my exile as kith and kin. In connection with the extraordinary concern of Hasan Feyzi and the other students for the Çalışkan family, which is immediate recompense for your unforgettable and earnest services for myself and the Risale-i Nur, and their broadcasting your good name throughout the country and causing the people of reality to look on you as friends, you are obliged in my place to be extremely circumspect and completely loyal and most careful in order to protect and defend the Risale-i Nur and its students more than myself, and to save them from the intrigues of the politicians and the enemies who poisoned me. For even the smallest mistake will discredit not only myself, but also thousands of innocent students and your own good name, which is now shining. My situation and the difficulties inflicted on me are illegal in 6 respects, so in order to absolve themselves from future responsibility, those who torment me unjustly and illegally are searching for a pretext for themselves and an excuse. So you have to be extremely careful. My dear loyal brothers, firstly, part of the conversation with the Interior Minister was sent to you a couple of days ago so that you might take it as a model and when necessary refer to it when presenting a petition to the minister or to the court. Our brothers too should defend themselves against the dissemblers accordingly. It seems that it was him who up to now has spitefully caused this torturous distress to be visited on me. However, you consult among yourselves and do whatever is necessary. But you must act with caution and without fussing and causing a commotion. Secondly, I have received by way of the timid mufti of this place, whom I have not met, Hulusi's letter from Kars and a letter from my nephew Nihat. In truth, that brother of ours preserves his staunch, extraordinary loyalty and his close concern with the Risale-i Nur. It is a meaningful coincidence that although he did not know it, I had sat in the peace for sabri due to the responsibility of Nihat being there, that if he was in Kars, he would meet with Hulusi. Just at the time I had said this here and then written it to you, they both wrote letters to me, although both had hitherto been silent. Thirdly, another subtle and heavy coincidence was the letter from our brother Refet, which demonstrated his complete loyalty and concern and that he is a Nur commander like Hulusi, arriving at the same time I received Hulusi's letter. Both should be added to the additional letters. Refet's teaching the Qur'an to the innocent children and his being preoccupied with writing out and reading Lemalar, the flashes, and those innocents praying that my illness should be cured, soothed it like a self and cheered me up. And fourthly, many times I had sorrowfully and regretfully wondered whether or not Yaqub Cemal, whose writing resembles that of Asim, was alive, and if he was alive, he was working at the Risale-i Nur with his fine pen. Then, endless thanks be to God, I received a letter from him showing both that he was alive and that he was serving the Risale-i Nur and that he persisted in loyalty. I exclaimed, all praise be to God. My dear loyal brothers, more than 100 times a truly valuable truth related to belief has appeared to me, but because the period of composition has finished, I have been unable to capture it, however much I tried. I have waited so that I might express it and communicate it clearly, but I have not been successful. Now, with the briefest of indications, I shall speak of that very extensive and lengthy truth. The Hadith, God created man in the form of the most merciful, is both a condensed, comprehensive statement and a figurative Hadith. When reading the Hulasat and the Jawshan al-Kabir, a truly significant and universal point concerning it became clear to my heart. So, in order not to lose that strange and beautiful point, I jotted down signs and allusions to it between the 17th degree of the Hulasat al-Hulasa, which is the testimony of the Qur'an's tone, and the 18th, which is the testimony of the universe's tone. There is no God but God, the necessarily existent, the One, the unique, through the tongue of the truth of humanity, through the words of its life and senses and disposition, and its being a measure and standard, and its humanness, and through the words of humanity's attributes and morality and vicegerency, and being index-like, and the nature of its I, and through the words of its comprehensive creation and diverse forms of worship, and its multiple needs, and its boundless poverty, impotence, and faultiness, and its unlimited potentialities. Here, I am going to explain and elucidate this brief indication again very briefly and in quote. You can add it as an addendum to the Hulasatul Hulasa. Yes, when I read the Hulasatul Hulasa, I see the vast universe as a circle for the remembrance of God. But since the tone of each realm of beings is very extensive, to comprehend the divine names and attributes at the degree of the knowledge of certainty, the intellect has to work excessively by way of reflective thought. Only then does it see them completely. But when the intellect considers the human reality, it confirms those names and attributes in that reality's comprehensive measure, tiny map, tiny true sample, tiny sensitive balance, and responsive egoism with a conscience, assurance, and belief which are utterly certain, direct, and assented to mentally. It acquires certain affirmative belief most easily in its mirror that is present with it. Without needing a lengthy journeying in thought, it comprehends a true meaning of God created man in the form of the most merciful. Because, since form is precluded in respect of Almighty God, what is meant by form is character, morality, and attributes. Yes, followers of the Sufi path travel two paths in gaining knowledge of God, in the inner and outer worlds, the shortest, easiest, surest, and most powerful of which they found to be the journey through man's inner self, that is, the silent remembrance of God in the heart. Similarly, the lofty people of reality proceeded down two highways, not in experiential and ideential knowledge of God, but in the much higher and more valuable belief and affirmation. One of these highways, like the Supreme Sign and Hizb-ı Nuriye and Hulasatul Hulasa, is by pondering over the book of the universe to behold the outside world. The other is by reflecting on the map of the human reality, index of human egoism, and the nature of man's self with the conscience and senses, and to an extent, vision, to rise to a degree of belief that is free of doubt and scruples, and is the most powerful degree, that of absolute certainty, which looks to the mystery of divine immediacy and the legacy of prophethood. Reflective thought on the inner self in attaining belief has been explained in part in the 13th word on the I and I-ness, and in the windows on life and man in the 33rd letter, and in part in other pieces of the Risale-i Nur. This may add it to both the additional letters and the ratifying stamp of the unseen and the Hulasa. My dear loyal brothers, don't be offended that, because of my indisposition, I am answering your numerous letters with one single wretched letter. Firstly, our secret enemies have employed every stratagem to gain a hold over several high-ranking government officials, and by needling my most sensitive points and harassing me to incite an incident resembling the Menemen or Sheikh Said incidents. But they realized that the old Said is no more, and that the new Said endures everything, so they switched plans to other plans, in short, to poisoning me. But divine preservation foiled that one too. Now, those dissemblers are officially utilizing black propaganda to scare the people away from me and induce them to give me up. However, don't you worry about this at all. Divine providence continues. The Risale-i Nur's victories are gradually spreading. Secondly, Hasan Feyzi's new eulogy and Halil İbrahim's of a week ago, showing their extraordinary goodwill towards my person, and their sincere and sorrowful poems of farewell have been accepted with a few modifications for three reasons. The first, they wrote them not on account of my person, but on account of my being a servant of the Qur'an and belief and the Risale-i Nur, they were looking to that sacred duty. The second, their descriptions, which far exceed my due, and those of our sincere brothers in that region whom they represent, are a sort of earnest prayer, and an auspicious omen, and an elevated desire for good, and a reflection of their abilities, their belief, and their most serious concern for the Risale-i Nur. The third, insofar as in their view I am the representative and exemplification of the collective personality of the Risale-i Nur and its students, there would be no benefit in slighting that wondrous goodwill of theirs and breaking their morale. I send thousands of greetings to both of them and their friends, particularly Ahmed Feyzi and our brothers in Denizli prison and those striving for justice for our sake. Thirdly, I cannot find the time to extract key passages from each of Hüsrev's many letters, which have so often suited my difficulties and which I keep with me, and add all of them to the additional letters. God willing, I shall study them when the occasion arises. Ahmed Nazif's letters, written in the name of the Inabolu students, and showing that he shared in Halil Ibrahim's heart-rending eulogy, dispelled my worries about my steadfast brothers in that region. May God be pleased with them. Fourthly, our old and new brothers whose names are mentioned in the letter from Ahmed from the village of Çoban İsa are working at the Risale-i Nur and getting their children to work at it and at the Qur'an, which is indeed a noteworthy service for the Risale-i Nur. May Almighty God grant them success. Amin. Fifthly, perhaps 20 times, Cevşen and Evrad-ı Kutsiye-i Şah-i Nakşibend have saved me from losing my life due to the physical and spiritual poison of my dissimilar enemies, but regretfully, due to their cruelty I suffer such effects, tension, grief, and revulsion in my nerves, and such sensitivity and strain that I can't endure having even my truest friend and most loyal brother with me for an hour. My spirit cannot abide it. I feel distress if one of them merely looks at me. The unsociableness that I used to suffer from slightly has become very severe due to the cruel maltreatment of those oppressors and their surveillance. It is as though I have died to social life before dying my death. It is on account of this truth and mystery that my select brothers are writing their eulogies. Also, the climate here abrades my nerves and irks me terribly. One winter day here weighs on me and distresses me more than the whole winter I spent in the Denizli prison. However, I can tell you in all certainty that just as the eye cannot endure the weight of a hair, so too, although my spirit is pained by a hair's weight, it takes on itself and endures gratefully and patiently mountain's weight of oppression and difficulties for the well-being of the Risale-i Nur and its students and in their place. But since my powerlessness and weakness and sorrow are excessive, instead of increasing my lot with their praising me, my select brothers should lighten it with their prayers and compassion and help me with their saintly influence and pity. It is a manifestation of divine grace that this severe sickness of unsociability that I suffer reduces to nothing the solitary confinement the trance inflict on me. It pleases me in a way rather than tormenting me. My dear loyal brothers, an efficacious consolation and heirs in this dreadful age, evidence that your superhuman efforts and enterprise have transformed Sparta and its environs into an extensive Madrasatu Zehra, and Al-Azhar University is your sending to this semi-literate brother of yours more than 20 perfect copies of the Staff of Moses, which show the coincidences and left even the printers in astonishment. May the most merciful of the merciful bestow 1,000 instances of his mercy on you, on those who write out copies, and on those who help them, for each word, and thousands of fruits of paradise, and have written in the books of your good deeds hundreds of merits. Amin, Amin, Amin. I considered them, and this occurred to my heart. Can it be that these champions have no present recompense? Then it suddenly came to me that by writing out this collection, first and foremost they read attentively its powerful lesson in belief, which silences the philosophers and induces them to believe, and so gain a spiritual treasury. Moreover, the copies they write will save the belief of many other people, or they will come to believe. There is a hadith which says, "A single person coming to believe through you is better than a plain full of red sheep." Also, with their blessed pens, they perform the sacred duties of the great Mujahids, heroes of early Islam. The future will most certainly applaud them and the Nurjus. Secondly, it is appropriate that the passage at the beginning of the Staff of Moses collection, which is underlined, be written out. Anyone who wishes may write it together with the beginning part of this letter. The 28th flesh and 8th ray have proved satisfactorily that in his ode, Jaljalutuya, Imam Ali, may God be pleased with him, foretells powerfully and almost explicitly with the same number the Risale-i Nur and its main treatises. In Jaljalutuya, with the line, "And with the name of Moses' staff, the darkness is dispelled," he gives news of its final treatise. A couple of years ago, we supposed that the Sublime Sign was its final treatise, whereas now, the writing of the Risale-i Nur being completed in 1364, and the above lines of Imam Ali giving news of a treatise that would dispel the darkness and scatter light like the staff of Moses, breaking their spells, and both the fruit section of this collection being a sort of court defense, and scattering the dark injustice that descended upon us, and the proofs section dispelling the darkness of the philosophy that formed a front against the Risale-i Nur, and compelling the Ankara Experts Committee to submit and appreciate it, and its containing numerous indications that it would disperse darknesses in the future, and like the staff of Moses, upon whom be peace, caused 12 springs to flow from the rock, this collection with its roots and their 11 luminous topics, and its conclusive proof of God, and its 11 decisive proofs, all afforded us the conviction that with those lines, Imam Ali, may God be pleased with him, was looking directly to the collection called the Staff of Moses, and was giving news of it appreciatively. Thirdly, Sabri, who is the Nur power station, and some of whose pieces are included in this 27th letter, has sent another eulogy. We have added it to the additional letters, and have also sent it to you. And Hafiz Mustafa, who is one of the blessed people, and has performed many services in spreading the Risale-i Nur, his blessed, innocent grandson wrote out the 6th ray when 7 years old, and wrote me a letter which will awaken an interest in the Risale-i Nur among the innocents here. He should be called Said Nuri. The name Nursi, referring to the village, is meaningless. The S should be left out and just the I remain to show his attachment to the Risale-i Nur. I was going to write many other things, but I have been obliged to cut it short due to the many duties and jobs I have to do. Said Nursi.